So we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. All right, what is up, y'all? So I have with me today a really good friend, uh, Jeff Vahldick. I've never actually said your name to you before. Jeff Vahldick? That
It's Vahldick.
Vahldick.
Vahldick is
Okay,
how I
cool.
pronounce it.
Okay, Jeff Vahldick. Okay, and believe it or not, like we're really good friends.
Yeah.
But Jeff, like I'm excited to have you on here simply because your positivity, your work ethic, your drive is very inspiring, and the interactions that we've had together, as you know, like there's something about it that's infectious, synergistic. So, and you have just a really amazing story, life story. And so I was just hoping that we could, if you're open to it, just talk a little bit about your life story and see if there's some learnings. I mean, first of all, I'd love for our community and members to get to know you just a little bit better because nobody has any clue, right? Nobody has any clue about anybody in there until we do something like this, probably. But also, I feel like there's some really, really, really great learning points that we can pull from that. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great, Paul.
Okay, awesome. So do you mind just like a general introduction of yourself?
Sure. Well, my name's Jeff Vahldick. I'm 56 years old. Been married to my wife, Christine, for going on 35 years now. Just probably had one of the best 2 weeks of my life. My daughter was here visiting from Belgium, so we had a great time with her. Professionally, I'm a project manager for a construction company out of Sacramento, an engineering contractor named Marcus General Engineering. I've been a construction junkie my whole life. I've worked with my own license, built houses, mostly pipeline construction is what we do now. And, engineered plans, I go through them and just review, looking for errors so we can order off unapproved plans. That's basically what my professional life is like now. And as I've grown older and learned a lot, I'm starting to chase other passions in my life. So a lot of stuff is coming and opening up to me as I've kind of learned to accept myself and open my heart. And I love people. Paul, you know that. I really love people, and learning about them, hearing their stories, it energizes me. So it's great to be with you.
Yeah, and it's selfless for us to now be learning about you, because I get that from you. Like you do love people and you love talking to them. I noticed like when we're in conversations or, when we were at El Dorado having our margaritas, it was never about you. Like it was always asking other people questions about them. So now it's your turn. I want to know about you a little bit. I know it's hard to talk about yourself, but
I love talking with people and just hearing their stories, and you see that. And the more I've gotten to know you and you've opened up also, it's great feeling to meet people and hear their stories. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully mine will be as interesting as some as that I've heard.
Oh, for sure. So I'm just curious, 'cause I don't think I've ever talked to you about this. So you have this construction, almost like engineering job right now. Did you go to school for engineering or anything like that?
I
Or is
did,
it just all on the job?
Mostly learned on the job with my passion to learn. I went to school after high school. I started going to college for engineering. Math was always my strong suit, but I've been in construction. I worked on farms since I was 12 years old. So, I have a mechanical background from working with my hands. I also understand the mechanics of engineering, and I have strong math skills, but I was just a little too rambunctious as a kid to stay in school. So I did not finish with my engineering degree, went into construction and found a mentor that took me under his wing. Jerry Lund, when I was 21 years old, he ended up being like a surrogate father to me, the father I didn't have. And he took me under his wing and taught me everything from the ground up. So I had this huge advantage of already having math skills, loving math, loving hard work. My grandfather taught me work ethic meant everything to him. So, when I got that opportunity, I took the most of it, and I quickly was promoted, became field foreman, running several crews, superintendent, and just have moved up through the years. They brought me into the office after a freak accident that happened to me that we might talk about a little bit later. And I started estimating and project managing jobs. And now I kind of have a unique job where I work from home. That's why I'm in Vegas now. I was able to move and still continue to do my job electronically. So project managing construction jobs in Sacramento from Las Vegas. I couldn't have
Yeah.
ever dreamed that up.
Yeah. And you're so good, like, in some ways you keep trying to step away or pull away so you can focus on your other passions and they just won't let you go.
No, and I love it too, Paul. That's
Yeah.
another thing is
Yeah.
I've got these new passions that we've talked about, and growing and learning about myself, and wanting to help other people. That's where I'm going, but it's really hard to step away from something that you've done your whole life and you still
Yeah.
enjoy, and it is still fulfilling. So
Yeah.
um,
And that whole not being able to sit still, like I so resonate with it. And it's a message that, like so many people that are relatively successful in what it is that we're really passionate about, like just had this, they just wanted to do things, they wanted to do something with it versus sit and learn about it.
well, this has been my most challenging job in construction. Is
Yeah.
this company has had its foot on the throttle since I started with them, and they had 80 employees when I started 5 years ago with them. We're at over 500 employees now, just massive growth. I could work 24/7 for these guys. There's just no end to the work. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's the most hours I've ever worked too. And here I'm finding these other things, the direction that my life has taken me. So pulling
Yeah.
those hours back has been a challenge, but working.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And so I remember you telling me about how you got the job. I feel like that was a really great story of tenacity, or I don't know what you want to call it, perseverance, like, um, can you just share like briefly, like, how that happened? Remember you were telling me how you showed up and you just wouldn't leave them alone. And
Oh, the particular job I'm with now, people know me in Sacramento. I've been around for a while, and I've been with Lund Construction for many years, and that they just got to a point where they're turning it over to their kids, and I had the opportunity to pull my pension. So I retired, worked through the laborers union, built a nice pension with them, and pulled it, and wanted to start a design company. So I went into business right away. I had all these ideas. 2 days later, we're starting a business design company with a friend. Sometimes partnerships just don't work out. In the meantime, Jeremy Jagers knows I'm out there, and I just ran across his group of people at a bar one time. I see him over there, and my friend's like, "Hey, there's Jeremy and all his cohorts. What should we do?" So we should go over and just say hi. So I went over and offered, buy him a drink, sat down with him for a few minutes, and he's like, "Well, you're going to come to work for me." And I'm like, I've got a design business I'm starting. We're working through a few things, but no. Anyway, he kind of gave me that rundown. You're coming to work for me. And he kind of started soliciting me a little bit. So finally, we did a follow-up phone call. He made me a great offer, has given me a longer leash than I've ever had that allows me to make decisions essentially like the owner would make. And he's just treated me great. It's really hard to leave this business when I'm being treated so great by an owner. So I'm straight up with him. He has a lot of people that tell him the stories that he wants to hear, and it's really tough sometimes to tell the truth. So I've gained a lot of tread with him as far as telling him exactly how I see it, and it's pretty rough sometimes.
I see that in you big time.
Yeah, he respects me for it, but sometimes it's just like you got to bite your lip when you're hearing not the best news. I love working with this man. He's got energy. I look forward to you meeting him, Paul. His energy is just off the charts, and his passion too is great. So we connected immediately, heart to heart, when I met with him, because he could see I'm an honest, straight shooter. He's the same. Anything he's ever verbally told me, he backs up. It's just great. It's a great relationship. So
that's great. Cool. So, do you mind if because we've talked several times about your childhood, and this is part of what's kind of fueled your passion for domestic violence. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about, that big pivotal point in your life?
Not at all. You could go through my childhood, and if you're the next door neighbor looking on, I had a great, wonderful childhood. I was raised by my stepfather, and great man. Always done fairly well in school, athletic, run around with girls, whatever, always having a good time. So from the outside in, you might say, hey, that guy's got it made and he's doing great. But I was born into a household filled with domestic violence. My father, my biological father used to beat my mother when I was in the womb. And I never understood just the psychology of all that, what it does to people. They divorced when I was probably 2.5, 3 years old. My mother remarried, like I said, a fine man, my stepfather, but it brought
Do you
along.
remember that? Do you remember that? At
I do. Of course, as I was 5 years old, I was against it because I just.
Well, the divorce part of it. Do you remember the divorce part when you were like 2.5?
I do not, Paul. The only thing I have a faint memory of was the day that he moved out. I was 2.5 years old, going on 3. While they're moving stuff out, I'm in the backyard roaming around by myself, and I found it was an orange juice bottle filled with blackberry briar killer. And when they found me in the backyard, I was drinking it, and I'm semi-conscious, foaming at the mouth, right?
Oh my God.
So I have this slight recollection of that. And my father, like one of the only memories I have of him is taking me to the hospital. He pulls off, it fits him like a glove that he would do something like this. He pulls off and gets me an ice cream cone to try to settle me down, not even thinking what it was doing for that poison. So when we got to the hospital and they pumped my stomach, they're like, how did you know that giving him ice cream would keep those fumes down so we can pump him and it didn't kill him? He's like, he had no idea. It's just how he was, right? So I have this strange memory of my father saving my life. And I've been told this story through the years too.
Yeah.
While I had this deep, deep hatred for him.
Because of the way he was with your mother?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, he could never hold me as a child. Everybody told me that I just would push away and cry and just throw a fit. My whole life until I became an adult, hatred towards my father. Felt it was my job to make things right and teach him a lesson. So very unhealthy way to think. And so that was the basis of my childhood. And then we marry in to a second family. My stepfather worked with my mom at Safeway. At that time, she would just become disabled for the rest of her life with rheumatoid arthritis. So it was just starting to come on. So I had fears of losing my mother at that age. She became bedridden just after they first got married. He had 3 older stepbrothers brought into the family, and one started molesting me at an early age. So here I go from losing my father, losing our family to start with, start a new family, and almost immediately I start being dominated by a much older brother who eventually came down to where he was sexually abusing me for years before I understood how to stand up for myself. So the consequences of that, not understanding it, feeling ashamed, feeling like I had done something wrong for all those years, it really held me back. You know, I feel I would have gone on and finished college, would have taken probably a similar career path in construction with engineering, but probably a much healthier lifestyle mentally and physically. Every time I would seem to start really becoming successful, I would tend to hold myself back and stop that success from happening. I never understood it.
Yeah.
And
but now you do understand it, right?
I did. And you know, it took counseling. It took a point where I broke down later in my life. I actually went to the hospital for kidney stones. If you don't mind me telling this story.
No, not at all. This is your time, man.
Craziest time. So we were having a little difficulty in our marriage, and our daughter was just starting to enter college. And I'm having back pain and stomach pain and just all this stuff is happening. So I go to the hospital for kidney stones. They tell me you're passing a kidney stone, and they give me some pills and gave me some painkillers. And when I got up to put on my shorts, I tripped and fell down and ended up with 2 protruding discs in my back and all these issues, pain in my leg. So I just go back to work. Hey, nothing's wrong with me. I'm good. I'm tough guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I fought through this all year. They thought it was a leg injury. Finally, they did an MRI on my back and went, yeah, get out of construction. So they tried to retire me. And that is like, no, just
Not going to happen
leaving
with
that
Jeff.
way. No,
Yeah.
it is not going to happen. We're not going out as a disabled person. So yeah, I just had to really take some time to reboot my life, basically. And it came down to I needed counseling. And so I went and I found a great counselor.
So when you're saying in the time off that you had to take because of what had happened, like it gave you some reflection time, and then you're like, okay, I want to start to work with this or deal with this or something.
It gave me too much reflection time, Paul. It felt like my whole world was just collapsing on me, because where I could go to work and just bury myself every day with 12, 14-hour days, come home completely exhausted, get something to eat, go to sleep. Don't have to worry about what's going on up here. I was forced to deal with it. So thank God I found a good counselor. Went through 30 difficult sessions with her, and she got me on a very good foundation where I started to understand myself a little bit better. A lot of education as far as going online and reading about stuff. ACE studies were done by Kaiser Permanente in the 90s. So adverse childhood experiences is what it stands for. And I want to say there were 40,000 people in this study. And it goes through, they give you 10, I believe this is the way it's set up. They give you 10 questions to answer. And your rating, or whatever your score on this test is, gives you an idea of just difficulties that you're going to have in life from what you've experienced as a child. So my particular score on this is 6. They'll step you through. If you have 1 or 2, you'll have these problems. And as you go up, they're just worse. So more likely to have heart disease, cancer, divorces.
I was going to say, were any of those like accurate predictions at all?
It's
Paul, a spectrum of like probability, right?
They were there, but my wife.
Yeah.
My wife. I am super lucky. And for some reason, I'm always able to come back to myself at the most difficult times. So we're right on the door for a lot of those things. So if it comes down to my health, as my health fails, I always seem to pull it together. And my most recent instance is finding you, Paul, at a time when I'm struggling.
I was going to say, you got the health thing figured out now. You don't have to worry
Oh my
about
gosh. Oh, yeah. Paul, I was so thankful. We moved here almost 2 years ago now. And like I said, my wife had retired. I had already pulled my pension. So I'm working for this other construction company. They tell me we can go work anywhere we want as long as we have Wi-Fi. So that's how we ended up in Vegas. My uncle's down here, and we're just with him towards the end of his life, just helping him and doing all we can with them. But that's how we ended up here. And after a couple months of working out of the house, trying to adjust from working on a job site to my little office in my home here, it was a lot of stress, and wasn't eating right. I wasn't exercising. I'm stressing all the time. My mind's running. I just one day said, hey, I got to find some help. I need some help with nutrition. So I went online and looked through and looked, and I ran across your site, SHT, SuperHuman Transformation. And I'm like, oh, that's me. I want to do that so badly. And you've made it so simple, Paul. It's simplified. We always have thought of a diet or a healthy diet as a lot of work and a lot of planning and all this. And it's really less work and less planning and less stress than we've ever had. So it's changed my wife and our diet and our outlook and our planning. We work together on it. And with the diet came, it's easier to exercise when you're healthier.
And one good thing leads to another, especially in the health realm.
Oh my gosh, it so did. And, my body composition, my stress level is way down, anxiety down, ability to dream again, Paul. It's pretty cool, because I never have understood meditation, or always felt like I was doing it wrong. And we sat and we had a discussion one day, and you gave me your thoughts and the way you go about your meditation. And it just made so much sense to me. So when I started incorporating that with another technique I use is a heart math technique, where I just make a connection.
I remember you telling me about that. I love it.
It's I could just give you an example of one of their techniques. Is they call it a quick coherence technique. And essentially I start my day, I'll get up. As soon as I wake up, I say thank you. I just laying next to the love of my life. And it's just like, thank you. So to do that, just really kind of to start the day, first thought, thank you. And I get up and I'll come in, I'll sit down and do a little meditation. The first thing I do is I use this quick coherence technique. So essentially I would sit down and I focus on the center of my chest. And then I visualize that I'm breathing through my chest, through my heart, essentially. Inhale, exhale, and then start to breathe a little slower. You're essentially shooting for maybe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. You can do that within 2-3 breaths. And then just intentionally put a good thought in your mind of something that you love. Like for me, I love you, Mom. That's what I just do. I lost my mom years ago. I miss her every day. Well, I get to say hello to her every morning. And I say, oh, thank you. So I'm like, I love you, Mom. And when you synchronize the breathing with that positive thought, it puts your whole body into it's. I can't explain it. I can just feel that my body is right. It's a great right place to start from. I do that within a minute. I get into this heartfelt, loving, I feel like Jeff. It's and then when I follow up with some simple breathing meditation, I'll break into a little bit of listening, and it's just the focus of, breaking away from that head running all the time to just, hey, focus on breathing, focus on gently bring yourself back. Like you said, don't just, because I'm one who's, pound on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Hey, just gently bring yourself back, listen, feel. I can feel feels like there's a little bit of breeze over the hair on my arms or my heartbeat or the end of my fingers. Once I go through that 3 to 5 minute process, I'm ready to start the day.
Yeah,
and
you're ready to have a great day.
Set some intentions. And so I found this pattern that is working so well for me. And it seems to be opening up a lot of opportunities for me. So
I love the state changing piece of it. At the very beginning, I told you I had a talk with Michaela, another one of our members, the other day, and she talked a lot about nervous system states and changing the feeling. And it sounds exactly like what you're doing, except you're starting the day by changing your physical state, by starting with the emotional state and kind of putting yourself into that. And that sounds beautiful. It sounds like a powerful way to start things. So.
Well, it seems so natural with everything that we all have going on.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it at night. You wake up, your first thoughts are whether it be work or issues or problems that you have, you get stuck in that state of anxiety, or it's not a relaxed state at all. So to start my day, to learn that lesson of just 5 minutes, and it's a great way to start the day.
Starting the day with something positive, that kind of sets a tone for the day, both physically and mentally. I love that. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about your counseling experience? Because it sounded like that was kind of transformative for you.
Not at all.
So, how did you find a good counselor? Well, did you go through a bunch of them, or was it just happened to be the first one and she worked out? Or
no, I'll give you. Until I did find the right counselor, it was a journey. So when I was 28 years old, later than that. So I must have been about 33 years old, Paul. My daughter had just turned 5. It's about the time I started being abused as a child. And I had this horrible dream that I had passed on abuse, like many abusers do. I had done enough research to kind of know of patterns of people who have been abused, but I still wouldn't accept the fact that that was me. Yeah. But in the background, I knew, and I had this horrible dream. So I went and I found a counselor. I could only do one counseling session. It's all I could muster myself up to. But in speaking with this counselor, it was obvious I'm not the type of person that is going to pass that abuse on to somebody else. But it was just one of the biggest scares of my life to wake up and think that, God, you could be that horrible person that, you know, I never wanted to be married. I never wanted to have kids because I didn't want to be like my father and cause those issues for someone. So that was my first time that I went into counseling. Years later, my niece had a home invasion to her house. Her fiance was killed. I went over and cleaned up, his guts off the walls and tore up all the rugs and just tried to make the house presentable for my niece to be able to come back into it and get her stuff. But it was kind of a traumatic event for me too, because we all love Garrett, and for him to go that way. So I went in for counseling because after a couple months, it was obvious that it affected me. I had to basically bring in my niece. It took several weeks for them to find the murderers. We had her on lockdown, and basically I was on guard protecting my niece, not knowing where these people were. So I went to counseling for that. Probably went again 3 sessions. Macho, ego, construction. Not a problem here. I'm a tough guy, right? So then that came that instance that I talked about. Go to the hospital for kidney stones, blow my back out, limp through it through the year. People at work are just like, Jeff, you're going to have to do something about this. You can't keep, and in my head, I'm like, I can't not come to work, right? That's my savior, is to go in and work 12-hour days. So I was forced off work. My wife and I and daughter were having issues in our family. So I said, hey, we got to try something. Let's try family counseling. So we went in for the initial session. They started talking with all of us. They opened up Pandora's box with me. And the counselor said, hey, Jeff, do you mind coming back on your own? Everybody has family issues, but this is a big trigger for it. So that's when I met her. Her name was Leah Ball. And
sounded like she had some experience that made you feel a little bit confident, you know.
She did. It's just some people you can open up to. It's really different. I don't know that I would have anything that would tell you what person to look for. You know what I mean? You can go online and you can see all their profiles. You can see little YouTube videos that they do. I don't know what my connection with her was, other than I felt like I trusted her. So that's
why I wanted to ask that, you know, because I feel for some reason, like a lot of the discussions I have with people, like their story involves some counseling, and then I'm just always curious, like how do you find someone? So it sounds like you had some experience with a few, so it's like it wasn't your first counselor experience, and then by the time you got to her, like you were able to kind of read your intuition and like, okay, well, this feels right, like, you know, I feel relatively comfortable with this person. Is that
and for me, Paul, I have not trusted men in my life because of my background. So, you know, initially when we were looking for someone, because I looked with Christy to find her online, and that was my only thing, is I want a female. I don't feel comfortable opening up to men at that time. As I've grown and learned more and met you too, Paul. Hey, you can be macho and tough and all that, but you still have feelings. So I've become more comfortable speaking with men about it. And that might be what I'm going to end up doing the most as I move forward, is just getting men to be comfortable, or at least address the subject of domestic violence. Obviously, we are the ones who perpetrate it the most. And a lot of times within this field, they don't address that. They don't address the abuser, because there is so much harm that's done and so much that needs to be done for the domestic violence victims and the children. That's where my heart is in this whole thing, to get these kids out of those situations. And when they get into a shelter, they can get counseling and they can start to make a little bit of sense out of this and realize that it isn't them that caused it. They shouldn't be ashamed for any of this. There's a shame factor that is put on kids, and even adults that deal with this subject. So I'd like to remove some of that stigma and just have people realize how unhealthy and how much damage domestic violence causes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into what is now your passion, right? And that is this. I mean, you're really good at construction, and it sounds like you're not going to be able to get away from that because you're so valuable. But but do you mind if we talk a little bit about, like, what you're doing in the domestic violence realm? Maybe just
Not at all.
yeah. So
Uh,
tell me about how that started. I mean, obviously it came from your experiences, but what are you involved in now? And
my whole life, I love people. Just like I said, I love people and I want to help them. I always want to be a helper, but I'd shut my heart off at one point. So
Mhm.
where I'd go to where what's natural for me, and I'd just shut it off, and I'd be, no, I'm a tough guy. So after my experience at the hospital and blowing my back out, having to go through counseling, I'm like, how can you give back, Jeff? That's something that you want to do. You got to let this go and just move forward with your life and help people if you can. So
And
I didn't know.
this is after your counseling, and you've made a lot of progress, right? And you're like, maybe like life's a little bit different, like your perspective's different. You're like, okay, now I want to give back.
A total different perspective because I
Yeah.
wasn't carrying this shame and guilt around, feeling like I'm less than, So a lot of my life was that, dragging this, yeah, just dragging this thing around with me all the time. So after I kind of let that go, now how can I make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
I'm working 60 hours a week. I don't really have spare time. What can I do? So I started, just the subject itself was speaking to me. So I went to a conference, a county conference it was First Five conference. So it's basically about the kids' first 5 years in life and how those adverse childhood experiences affect their lives and how they end up having a troubled life by how they started, which was just totally innocent, not on the kids at all. So I went to this conference, totally out of my realm. I'm a construction guy, and I meet a few people and talk. And then I went to another conference as a follow-up to that with Stand Up Placer, which was a local domestic shelter sexual abuse representative for the county. I met the executive director, spoke with her a little bit. She says, why don't you just start volunteering time? I'd never even thought about that. And I'm like, well, what good's that going to do? She's like, we have a thrift shop. We're open on the weekends. You can choose your hours. So I've always worked Saturdays. I started just pinching a couple hours off on Saturdays. So I'd go in for 2 hours in the afternoon, and you go in, you fold clothes and you hang stuff on racks. And people are like, Jeff, what are you doing? They just thought that was the craziest thing in the world, that I could be down here sorting through and pricing stuff and ringing up, and then you see the survivors that come in and they get free items there, but they're always so, I just felt bad because it seemed like they were ashamed. That same trip I'd been on for so long, they come in and it's tough. So that experience was really touched my heart. So the more I helped, the more I wanted to help.
Yeah.
The executive director came down, checked in, and she's like, dude, people are like feeling your heart. Would you like to join our board? And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
what? She's like, have you ever thought about joining the board here? And I'm like, I have never in my life thought of myself as a board member, but I would love to. So they interviewed me, and they brought me on as a board member, and it was just like off the chart for me. Right. So now here I am helping move the direction forward of this agency that has a great reputation. So,
And what's the name of the agency again?
that was Stand Up Placer, and they are Placer County. So I lived in the Sacramento area, Roseville, and that's the county I lived in. So some of the things we did was a stand up and dance. So we had this huge get together every year as a fundraiser, and people would do, they'd bring them in with dance lessons, and they'd come on. So the local celebrities, whether they be news anchors or stuff like that, they'd come in and have a dance contest, and we'd raise money. Well, then COVID hit. So we had one of the first online celebrations, went over well. We probably brought in $50,000 or $60,000 on this event. It just really,
I think I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
Oh, it was so cool. It was one we didn't know what to do with, with COVID, and we were one of the first ones to start one of these online events. It was a real success, and then they brought me into where we were working on the expansion of their safe house from 55 beds to 155, and with my connections in construction, it's just getting everything teed up, paperwork through the county. We went through all of that, and then of course COVID changes things. So we were still working on that when I had to leave the board when I moved down here. Just as a coincidence, my late aunt, they had started a foundation on behalf of her years ago that I've never been involved in or really didn't know about. They saw what I was doing with Stand Up Placer and reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to join the board here?" So right now I'm with Teresa's Fund. We have a service called domesticshelters.org. Teresa's Fund was started in 1992 as a way to provide funding and essentially help with regulations and officials in order to get expansions, going through all the regulations and processes and then the fundraising. And so that's where Teresa's Fund originally started. In 2014, as a way to expand our services, we started an online, which is the largest online directory of domestic shelters throughout the United States and Canada. So we represent and support and promote these 2,800 shelters throughout the United States. Many of them don't even have websites. So for us to be this nationwide service that promotes their cause, a lot of times if you're in, say, Arcata, where I grew up, Arcata, California, the local shelter there might not even have a website. So if you're in the heat of the moment, you need help that night, you can't find it. You go to domesticshelters.org and you're most likely going to find information that you can't find in these local directories. So
contact info and phone number and address and all that stuff. So these domestic shelter locations, is it literal shelters where people can come if they need a place to stay, or is it a place they can come and just talk to somebody? Like,
they have
what is the function of the shelters?
There's a lot of different setups, Paul. Ours, I say ours with Stand Up Placer, was a physical site with 55 beds. So you would come in, say if they brought you in, we didn't drug screen and do stuff like that. So they all have a little different feel to them. Some will make you do a drug screen before you go in. Our interpretation was, here's a person who's in trouble and they happen to be on drugs because of the lifestyle they're leading. We can bring them in and get them help and then get them on the path to sobriety. So others go the opposite way, where you got to get sober first before, but they vary. Some are just programs where they'll put you in a hotel that night. Some are longer programs where they can get you in housing for 2 years. There's just so many great programs throughout the country.
And is this usually people trying to escape a situation, or is it someone that do you have to qualify financially, or like?
Well, those qualifications are different throughout all the shelters, but they're set up for somebody trying to escape a violent situation. And it's such a, I guess, dramatic, bold move to leave your abuser, or say it's your husband. It's the person you love, right? You've fallen in love and given your heart to this person, and you find out they're an abuser after the fact. And, and people hang in there and they hang in there, and the kids are the ones, to me, I have great compassion for people who are being abused, but those kids are innocent. I mean, completely innocent. And so to get them out of that violent environment and get them with professionally trained people, therapists, just to even have that introduced to them at a young age. And I didn't know that there was anything wrong with me, much less know how to try to work on it and improve and understand things. It's they get educated by people that are educated in the field, and that's the best thing, is to get information and learn. So and a lot of times they'll put you up in a hotel for a couple days just to get you out of that violent situation immediately. But generally those are not as successful as a shelter because, you know, that your abuser can come right to the hotel, or you call them and
you can't escape it because you're just so tied
you're
to
in
them.
love. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yep.
It's such a tough thing. And it's tough for the people in the field because they want to help so much. And a lot of them have been from this background, and they know that they're going to go back to their abuser, and then they're going to come back, and they're going to go back. And it's a long process before the abuse either stops or they leave it. And it's generally they have to leave it for it to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a full immersion experience to get them out of that and just try to reset things. So is a big part of what you do then cultivating awareness, and then I'm assuming also like fundraising, right? Like trying to get more money. Okay, cool. Because you've done some pretty cool projects. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just learning because, you know, this isn't something I can say. I'm a construction junkie. I love it, and I've never had a huge interest in these other worlds that are out there that I'm a part of. My background alone. So with domesticshelters.org, a lot of my role is to raise awareness with men too. We're going to have to accept and learn about this and move forward, because it is people who are abused that don't get counseling do have a higher rate of passing on that abuse. So I'm trying to raise awareness with that. Of course, fundraising so we can do more. For example, Paul, don't get me started here. This is one of the greatest things I've ever been a part of. We started with domesticshelters.org last year, what we call the Purple Ribbon Awards. And these are awards given out to people within the domestic violence field that are doing this hard work every day, trying to help people, running these shelters, working with police officers, all of the different stuff that's involved in this, so many different categories. So we started this Purple Ribbon Awards last year, and we gave away $30,000 in direct grants, because that's another part of nonprofits. Sometimes these grants will have so many strings tied to them that if they're not huge grants, they're not even worth taking because of the follow-up paperwork. But these are unattached grants. The people, when they get these, you want to talk about thankful. Not only
who are the people, victims or shelters?
We have victims, we have shelters, we have, like I said, people, businesses that are involved with helping. You have the therapist. It's just,
nice.
It's on and on. We had over 30 different categories that we'd broken things down into and gave away.
Oh, and then winners within each category?
Winners within each category. And then we're choosing, I believe, 5 grant winners. So we're giving away a total of $35,000 this year. Our celebration, I'm going to hold this up here, if you can see.
Yep.
Our celebration is going to be on Wednesday, September 21st at 1:30 p.m. You can go to either look up Purple Ribbon Awards or go to domesticshelters.org. And we'd love to have anybody who wants to join us in this half-hour celebration. We're going to give away $35,000 to probably 5 different organizations. And to see the joy that these people get from what they're doing, just even to be acknowledged with the awards itself. But when you back it up with a grant,
a little bit of money,
my gosh, it's so exciting for me. So I'm reaching out to people all over the United States. I'm meeting people and having discussions I never thought I would be having. And where this is going, I'm not sure, but it feels right to me. So being a part of this, and it's just, I never would have dreamed up how to give back like this, but it just motivates the people that are doing all the hard work to keep doing that hard work. So
that's beautiful.
Total feel good project here.
Yeah. So is that event a local live event, or is it a virtual event?
It's a virtual event.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll be there then. You said September 22nd?
September 21st. It's a Wednesday.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And,
so we'll definitely, that'd be a great way to support it, just to attend this. It sounds relatively short, but this is where you'll be giving away all the awards, huh?
Yeah. And I don't know if anybody can hit that QR code and take you right to it.
Yeah. We'll put it up on the screen. I'll get a good image of it. So
and before that, we're doing a 3-hour webinar. It's another thing that we've got into that is been huge for us is these webinars with other professionals and collaborations with other agencies. They're going to places that I never could have dreamed up. We're having over 1,000 attendees on these webinars, just discussing the different forms of abuse, interactions with police, on and on the topics. And it's what started
like
out as
more around the awareness piece of it to educate.
It is. And we started these webinars as a way to educate survivors, and it's become more of educating the people that are within the industry or field. So it's a lot of professionals that are on this.
Cool.
It's so cool to go on and look through it, and it's mostly the people that are working at the agencies, not the people that are coming in for help. So we're actually working amongst all the people in the field, bringing them up to speed on local things. I mean, things that are working throughout the country that they may not have heard of yet.
Yeah.
And just, the collaboration amongst everybody is wonderful.
So improving their skills. And then you, with the fundraising, because you've done a couple really cool things. Like you had some Times Square billboard things. You were in a music video. We're gonna, I'll make sure to share that. Right?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, things I never could have dreamed up just coming to collaboration. So a year ago, we had the idea of, we have a connection with one of our board members. She also is a music producer. So one of her guys had written some special songs that just seemed to connect. I'm like, is he singing about our organization here or what? She's like, you got to meet this kid. So Patrick Barnett, he is just a really good dude and a wonderful musician. He did a song for us last year, and then we ended up doing a music video. So I was able to go out to Nashville, Tennessee, and being a part of a music video. Never would have dreamed that one up.
Yeah, it was a great video, and it was so genuine. I was tearing up the first time I watched it.
Well, it was just trying to help people and showing what shoes they're walking in. Yeah. And yeah.
And then the Times Square thing, that was how many impressions? Like, what was the
again, just something I never could expect. So collaboration amongst another agency, Safe in Harm's Way. She is an ex-Billboard executive and still has connections within that. So what happened is just her connecting and collaborating with us. We're spreading the word about what she's doing. She's spreading the word about what we're doing. This agency, and it's an acronym, NEON. So it's Neon Advertising. What they do is they advertise for pharmaceutical companies and big promotions in New York City. They got their place on Broadway there, and they have to give, I believe it's 9% of their income to nonprofits in advertisement. So they chose us, the collaboration between our two agencies, and they came up with this billboard campaign. Paul,
part of that 9%.
I'm getting choked up thinking about it because they call me up and say, we're running live billboards on Times Square on 6 different electronic billboards. And I'm like, how did that just happen that fast? You know, and they're like, no, they've been putting this in the background. They've been putting this whole campaign together. The Last I'm Sorry, it was called. So it's essentially, you'd have a dozen roses that are fresh, and then a dozen roses that are partially broke down, and a dozen roses. And they put this whole thing together as a symbolism of, you know, you're being abused, and your abuser comes and says, I'm sorry, but your flowers are still there from last week that are breaking down from the last I'm sorry, and the ones before that are just totally dead. And so when they play these on a billboard, and some of them are on double billboards, so it's like, you know, they're 100 feet tall, some are wrapping around the building. So I flew out there, had never been to Times Square, had never been to New York, and just hit there right after a blizzard. Air snowed in, just the effects of everything. And to walk through Times Square, like literally my jaw hanging open, watching these amazing billboards. So they ran those for 30 days, 6 billboards on Times Square, and I believe 30 cities throughout the United States. They say over a billion eyes saw these billboard campaigns.
Wow.
So, and it
And
was
then was there a call to action at the end of each one, or a website, obviously, like, or a phone number, something like that?
yes, well, they had our uh, the Last I'm Sorry website. It's also
Mm-hmm.
connected with Safe and Harm's Way and
Yeah.
also connected with domesticshelters.org. They have so many ways to set up, I guess, discrete ways to get into these websites too. So they all have like a cancel out, because a lot of, especially with COVID, you're at home with your abuser. So if you're on
Mm-hmm.
your iPad in the other room, their phone might connect. They know that you're what you're doing. So there's electronic ways that we have set up with our websites to where your abuser doesn't know where you've been. And if you need to just discreetly tap out, you can get right out of the site without anybody knowing you're there. So that was also a part of what they had collaborated on and worked, is moving forward with this way not to be electronically recognized when you're looking for help or reaching out
Yeah,
for any services.
that's super intelligent. So, dude, I mean, thank you so much for just sharing, what's seems to be this very personal information, but I feel like it's an inspiration for a lot of people. Just overcoming adversity. I've heard this over and over, the importance of figuring out why you're the way you are with certain things, and you having this experience of going to different counselors and finally figuring out, hey, like, this is why I'm this way, and now I'm releasing that, and I'm opening myself up to the world so I can do some good in the world. And I just think it's a tremendous story with a ton of good learnings. How can people support you? Is there, aside from the event, which we'll definitely share, is there anything else, like a website or anything that you'd like to direct people to? And I definitely want to see, I think I got a glimpse of some statues back there at some point. I don't know if that fits into this.
I don't know how this ties in at all, but yes, any support that you can give, it's, whether it's just emotional support, hey, you guys are doing a great job, but go to domesticshelters.org and just look through our website and see that everything that we have going on. One of the greatest things that we have invented are these wish lists, which they've had in the past at these shelters throughout the United States. You can go on to through our website, you can go on to individual shelters within your own community if you just want to help in your own community. And they have wish list items on there that you can, as simple as just hitting a button, say, okay, I will buy toilet paper or whatever, you know what I mean? Do they need shirts for young boys? Or
it's like a wedding registry, but for these people that need the victims of domestic violence. So.
Absolutely. And I'm so not my strong suit here, but our CEO president has done webinars with Amazon World Services, and they are just in awe of this service that we've set up. They're trying to spread it out to other nonprofit and also for-profit, basically the format that we set up with them. So it's something that's kind of blowing up in the background that I have little to do with, other than I support these people and do everything I can to help. We've got some amazing projects going on in the background, and that's one of them. So if you simply wanted to just, drop $20 on something that somebody needed in your area, just go on to domesticshelters.org, look up the wish list, and it'll bring up everybody who's set one up within the United States and Canada. And it's such a simple, easy, and here's where I go with this. I've never felt so fulfilled in my life. I've been successful in construction. I consider I've had a successful life. I've saved money. Life is good. But until I learned how to give, that's where I have had my biggest fulfillment, is giving back. So I would highly suggest, if you don't donate to a cause, to find a cause that resonates with you and send them $1, send them $5. It really helped my healing process to know that I was giving back in some way. So whether it's volunteering or giving a little cash when you can, whatever, just even a supportive word on the website of, you guys are doing great things, or however your feelings are when you look at it, sharing that is a gift to us.
Yeah, I love it. And then obviously, if you are a victim of abuse or violence, or if you even know someone that's in that kind of a situation, maybe direct them to that website as well, right?
If you're in a situation where your life is in danger, obviously call 911 first and get some help immediately. You can also call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, um, which will direct you to help also. But if it isn't life threatening and in the moment, please come to domesticshelters.org. We have the most comprehensive website within the United States for sure. And we have so much information, leads to counselors, books, just articles that have been written by both survivors and counselors and people within the industry. It is a large database of stuff that will help you.
Absolutely. All right, man. Hey, dude,
Let me
love
sneak
your
in one
heart.
more thing
Yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah. I meant to. Sorry. I
You
brought
want to
it up.
talk about what has been my personal passion most of my life. My
Yeah.
grandfather was my hero. I mean,
Yeah.
he was just everything to me. And I just thought he could walk on water. He created these sculptures that I have had with
Dude,
me my whole
so
life. And
impressive.
they have been my strength, Paul. It's been a lot of what's kept me going, of how much admiration and how much strength that these sculptures have given me. But I'll walk out here just to give you a little bit of dimension. Um,
Like how big those
these
are.
bad boys have been around. So I'm finally getting to the point in my life because these have been like my security blankets.
Yeah.
And I could never, ever think of letting them go. But here I am with this amazing art my grandfather was well known for in the 60s. I have not tried to promote his work at all because whenever I have shown, people want it. So now I've got to a point where, hey, I can use this art to move my new passion forward, and that is helping people. So that's what I'm in the process of doing. I'm going to be showing the art and just seeing where that takes me.
Yeah. And those are carved in, like out of big redwood trees, right? Single pieces of
Yep.
wood.
Single
That's,
piece of
yeah.
wood, hand carved. He would shape it. We go behind the loggers of 150 years ago would leave usually 15 to 20 feet of stump in the ground so the tree would fall without shattering.
Mm-hmm.
He'd go back and he'd take the heart of that wood out of that stump, square it up, bring it home, and then all hand tools all the way down from these big pull chisels down to the finest emery cloth made and waxing. So he was passionate about North America, North American wilderness, the North American indigenous people. He loved the fact of how they lived off the land and were in harmony with Mother Nature. And, Grandpa was like a conservationist, but old school. He
Yeah.
trapped his way and hunted all the way across the United States till he found his place amongst the redwoods on the West Coast. So
Sounds like our kind of people. Sounds like the direction we're trying to move right now.
Yes.
So then that's a way too, if you have an interest in these sculptures, that could be, maybe drop us a message or just let us know. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have a website if you wanted to go on and just read a little background on him. It's floyddavis.sculpture.com.
Cool.
FLOYDDAVIS sculpture.com.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Jeff, dude, thank you so much for sharing that very heartfelt story. And thank you for the work that you're doing, the example that you are with health and vibrancy and vitality and, being selfless with your time and energy and contributing. And really enjoyed that. And I know that a lot of people are going to get some really, really great learning from that.
I love it. And Paul, thank you too from the bottom of my heart. A lot of what I'm doing is made a lot easier by what you've shown me and taught me and been there. And like I say, your heart is always in it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So glad
we're connected now. We're connected
yes,
now.
Sir.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, man. Say hi to Christine.
I will.
All right.
I hope to see you soon.
All right.
All right. Later.